So President-elect Trump has done and said some things, a good number of things actually, that I really like and have a lot of hope for, but there's a couple things that have bothered me, and we're going to be talking about one of them today. Let's let Rand Paul lead the discussion, because I think we all need to think about this, and Trump has promised he will do this, which is kind of scary.
I'm not in favor of sending the Army in uniforms into our cities to collect people. I think it's a terrible image, and that's not what we use our military for. We never have. Right. And it's actually been illegal for over 100 years to bring the Army into our cities. Army and our military are trained to shoot the enemy. They're not trained to get a warrant to do what they're doing. The police have a difficult job, but the people removing people from our country need to be a police enforcement domestic agency, yes, not the military. I'm all for remain in Mexico, I will not support an emergency to put the Army into our cities. I think that's a huge mistake.
Do you think that's what Trump is intending to do?
That's what he said.
Well, that's what he said yesterday, or his spokesman said. The stories all said he would declare an emergency to use the military to remove people. I'm not for that. I'm not for really most presidential emergencies because they smack of martial rule. They smack of no congressional approval. They smack of no checks and balances. So, look, I'm supportive of President Trump. I'm supportive of removing people illegally here, particularly people who have committed crimes.
100%.
But I'm not for the Army marching up and down our streets. I think it's a terrible image to send the world. It's a terrible image for us as citizens. And so I hope he will think twice about trying to use an emergency edict to have the Army patrolling our country.
I agree with Rand Paul 100%. He's expressing some of the concerns I've had, certainly some of my libertarian-leaning friends and progressive friends and people of other ideological flavors. We don't want to send the military into American society and do that for a lot of the reasons that Rand Paul just mentioned. I want to add 3 more, which is the reason I'm making this video. Number 1, during the Black Lives Matter riots, the George Floyd protests, whatever you want to call them, in 2020, Senator Tom Cotton, Republican Senator Tom Cotton, wrote a piece for the New York Times that was controversial in another way that we won't get into now, urging President Trump to deploy troops to the streets to quell the vandalism and the rioting that was happening. It was awful. It looked bad. And Trump threatened to do it. He talked about doing it. Polls showed that Americans were sort of split, that a lot of Americans supported, whether it's the National Guard or whoever, but sending military troops to the streets of the United States in these major metropolitan cities to put this down. And Trump didn't do it. And I applauded him for that. I'm glad he didn't do it. Those J6 images will haunt us for the rest of our lives, and they are what they are, and that's another debate for another time. But aren't you glad we don't have images of soldiers running around and attacking American citizens or doing what they're going to do with them, who are not equipped in the way like police are, like Rand Paul explained? I'm glad Trump didn't do it then, when he had political incentive to do it, when he had Republicans encouraging him to do it. And I think in retrospect, we as a country, and certainly if you're somebody that liked him or voted for him, should be glad that that never happened. Number 2, the immense cost of deploying the U.S. military on the streets of America to do something we all agree, most of us agree needs to happen, to fix our legal immigration problem. But to do in that fashion, the legal costs alone. My colleague and friend Brad Palumbo talked about in another video how much this would cost. He went into detail. So there's that. And at a time when you have Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy with their Department of Government Efficiency, and they're trying to see where they can cut and make government smaller and the state smaller and make government more limited. Unleashing the military on the streets of America is big government stuff, and it doesn't really jibe with what they're trying to do with Doge or just this sort of libertarian aura of making governments smaller. They don't jibe. The third, and this might be the most important point too, if I was speaking directly to Donald Trump or the people around him, the Biden administration and the left became very comfortable with authoritarianism, with authoritarian measures in the name of making sure that Donald Trump never got a second term. This is a guy that they inflated charges against him. It appeared like they were trying to throw Biden's political opponent and later Kamala Harris's political opponent in jail. They threw him off state ballots until the Supreme Court overturned that. They pressured social media companies to censor information that might be positive for Donald Trump or his supporters. These are tin-pot dictator, banana republic authoritarian measures, and Democrats got entirely too comfortable in doing that when the target was Trump. I feared if they wanted, they would even go further. Remember, they had a disinformation governance board at one time to regulate our speech. All during this time, these same people were warning that if Trump got a second term, he would be an authoritarian, a fascist, Hitler even. Well, if you deploy the military to the streets of the United States for any reason, even a reason that ostensibly we think a problem that needs to be fixed, it's going to look pretty authoritarian. Why can't you be the better person and not give them what they want? That's what they want. They said you were going to be an authoritarian. They promised it. MSNBC, 24-hour cycle. This guy's going to be an authoritarian. Don't do it. Don't give them that. We don't need to militarize American society, as Rand Paul said. And we have to fix illegal immigration. You're not wrong about that. We're just different in how you're supposed to do that. But when Rand Paul said we shouldn't be doing this, that he would vote against it, I think he's right. We need a secure country, but we don't need a militarized America. Please don't do it.